Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Just Two Dads with my co-host, Shawn Francis. I am Brian Altunian, and today we've got a special Father's Day edition of Just Two Dads to acknowledge dads and all the accoutrements that come with that. So today on our Just Two Dads episode, we're looking forward to talking to you all. Awesome. Welcome, everybody, to Just Two Dads. As I said, I'm Brian Altunian. Want to welcome everybody who joins us live on Facebook. Thank you for being here and being a part of what we're doing. Please feel free to comment. Oh, look at that. My daughter. See how I get to spend Father's Day early with my daughter, Jo. Thanks, Jo. Happy Father's Day, or happy, anyways, thank you, babe. So if you're joining us like Jordan on Facebook Live, or you're catching us after the fact on our YouTube channel, Just Two Dads YouTube channel, we welcome you. If you're seeing us live, you get to see our faces. For those of you who listen on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcast or Pandora, iHeartRadio, anywhere where you catch a podcast auditorily, we welcome you as well, and glad to have you here. And for our family and friends down in the U.S. Virgin Islands on WSTX AM radio, great to be here for all of you. We're looking forward to the time we get to do a live show with you down there on the islands. Oh, Robert Moorhead's here with us. Blessed day to you, sir, as well. It's been a beautiful week. We are kind of coming out of the post-pandemic world, and that gives us an opportunity to talk about a whole bunch of new things, right? It's kind of a reawakening and a reopening. So we're looking forward to talking to a whole bunch of subjects today. And before we jump into that, of course, as always, welcome my dear friend and colleague and business partner in Thrive and my family, Mr. Shawn Francis.
How are you, Brian?
I'm feeling good, buddy. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm feeling very reflective. We have our topic today of Father's Day, what that means generally speaking, what that means when you have the special needs component, and kind of what it means now at the stage in life that one might be at. So since it literally is just two dads and today, and those of us and those who are tuning in to watch and or hear us, let's kind of jump right into it.
And by the way, when we do that, Shawn, it's interesting. I definitely think we should talk about the fact that you have a special needs child who's a boy. My special needs child was a daughter. I don't know if there's a difference between how dads are with their special needs children, but I think that's going to be an interesting opportunity for us to look at. We got a lot of topics to cover today.
Yes.
Big event we're going to be talking about, and a lot of stuff to cover. I didn't need to jump in and cut you off, but
no.
That's okay. Two of us.
Okay.
I figured
I totally agree, but I can begin. I don't know for you, but for me, growing up, Father's Day was like. It's funny. I don't remember a lot of them growing up, and this is how the reflective portion comes into play. I almost feel like I was a bad son or something. I remember my dad and I talking about. This actually is going to sound selfish. I remember asking him. I was 10 or younger, and I asked him. I was like, "What is Children's Day? You have Mother's Day, you have Father's Day. When do children get their day?" And my dad turned to me and calmly says, "Boy, every day is Children's Day."
Yeah. That's what my dad used to say too, by the way.
I did okay. He's like, "You don't have to pay any bills. All you have to do is get good grades." And the other thing is, again, from a reflective standpoint, to me, I was like, get good grades. It's funny how where we are is not always necessarily where we want to be. There's always something else you're striving towards, or if not even striving, you just want to switch places. Well, as a kid, part of me was like, I would almost rather have a job and deal with bills than have to go to school and get good grades. That was just really burdensome to me, So I don't remember Father's Day with the exception of maybe I can't even remember specific gifts that I made in class or anything like that. But they were little, construction paper cutouts that you make for your dad, that kind of thing. I remember Father's Day gifts that I've given as an adult because my appreciation has completely changed. I remember as a kid, what became typical for Father's Day was, your dad got like I don't know, some Old Spice or a pack of draws or something like that. That doesn't exactly convey your level of appreciation. But that's what it was for me growing up, and it's changed. Before we get into it changing and everything, what was it like for you growing up, other than your dad reminding you that every day is Kids Day?
It's funny because I think that parents, Mother's Day and Father's Day are different, right? Moms, well, I don't know. I think some parents are like, hey, it's my day. I don't want to see any of you. I want my day to go. My dad played golf, or my dad liked to do things, kind of on his own. But I say that, and at the same time, I know my dad was also very much like, have everybody over for dinner and barbecue and hang out by the pool. Usually because it's June and the weather in Los Angeles is pretty nice. So I know some moms would love to be left completely alone for Mother's Day, and others want to be taken out for brunch and not have to do the dishes and not have to be left alone and not have to do the burden of parenting. But my dad, I think we did do a lot of stuff together. When I grew up, my childhood was actually pretty amazing because we did do a lot of things as a family. As I got older, it became much more distant. It became much more, much more estranged. As I have my own family, obviously focus on Father's Day, with my own kids. So completely different experience as a father than I was as a child. I would love to hear if there's any specific kinds of customs down in the Virgin Islands, if you grew up and if you spent much time down there, customs around Father's Day. Are there certain things that happen down in
none that I can think of that are any different. That's the part where it's very, very similar. Like, for instance, if you're talking about cultural things, there's some things that would be done for, say, a Christmas holiday or something like that, specific foods that you'd have there that you might not anyplace else. But the idea and the concept behind Father's Day, or even Mother's Day for that matter, down there is not much different. A lot of the same standard gifts and sentiments that you would express anywhere else.
You don't give your dad ties down in Virgin Islands?
Same thing. You might not see a tie as much, but growing up, that was still like the standard thing, like underwear, socks, a shirt, a tie, right. Cologne, just or if he's handy, tools or something like that. So that's not a whole lot different.
Isn't that funny? For dads, getting socks and underwear is somewhat of a norm, but you wouldn't buy your mom stockings and underwear for Mother's Day,
No. And if you got her like a pot or something like that, something to cook in.
Oh my gosh!
Especially if you live there for some kind of dining where if you're under the same roof there, it's almost like, well, this kind of serves you.
Right? Exactly. If my mom got like a set of knives or something for Mother's Day, she would hurl them at us. Like, she'd be like, "Are you kidding me? Like, what are you giving me tools to serve you? No, thank you." It was always flowers and again, treating mom. It was always about treating mom. Dad, it was more about hanging out and doing fun stuff and just it seemed like there was a lot less pressure around having to do anything during Father's Day. I will tell you, as a father, my kids have always acknowledged Father's Day. Have always done something sweet and special. Now that my older girls are live across the country, I don't get a chance to see them on Father's Day, but I get lovely cards and notes and handwritten things. And Gabby always does something very artistic because Gabby's minor in art. But Jordan's like first one. Like Jordan would send me, like Jordan would call me and acknowledge me. To probably wake me up in the morning, to be the first one to acknowledge. Right. So I think she's already wished me Father's Day couple times this week, and it's not until Sunday. So,
right.
But it's fun. It's enjoyable being a dad to my kids because my kids just, they just exude a lot of love, which is
right. And for me, it's been, for lack of a better term, developmental, because the first time I got a Father's Day gift of any kind was when the first Father's Day that Laura and I were married, because we dated and she had her daughters from her previous marriage, and the first Father's Day, I got a card from the younger of my two stepdaughters. It was actually, it's made out of construction paper, but it was a card. But the cover of the card actually was a torso with a tie. Matter of fact, I was thinking about that the other day. I sure would like to find that. And then I have, another official Father's Day after Elijah was born the following year. And then when we took in my sister-in-law's kids, I really don't know at what point they felt wishing or giving a Father's Day gift. But my approach was always going to be that was going to take place when they initiated that and did that. And if it didn't ever, then so be it. It would be kind of weird, like, aren't you going to wish me happy Father's Day? That's something that just would, take place on its own. And it's funny because I was asked by one of the girls just 2 days ago, what do you want for Father's Day? I answered in a very corny tone. This is actually the oldest of my Laura's daughters from her previous marriage, my stepdaughter. And I said in a sarcastic tone, but I was serious. I said, your happiness. But I really meant that, though, And what I did tell Laura is that what I'd like to do for Father's Day is, I'd like to give rather than kind of give something. I don't think I'm a bad dad or anything like that, but I just feel like there's room to grow. I can do better, and I really feel like I want to give. So I was like, you know what? I'll fire up the grill and we'll do something. How about I do that? So I do something that everybody can enjoy.
That's nice. That's nice. I remember when Gabby was young, she made, I don't know if it was at camp or where it was, she made me a t-shirt that had her like handprints all over it. And then like in pen written, Happy Father's Day and around, which is very sweet, but you can't wash that, right? How are you supposed to wash it, right? It's because it's a t-shirt, right? And so I didn't wash it. And so I wore it for like, 3 or 4 years, and I would wear it that day and then I'd hang it up or put it, fold it and then the next year I wore it, and the next year. And like the third year and fourth year was kind of raggy, kind of raggedy, and didn't look so like maybe a tie is fine actually next year. There's a long time that I never wore ties. I didn't wear ties until we started doing our financial services business, and I had to wear a tie again. So, but the idea of buying me a tie was actually always a joke because I would never wear a tie. So,
right.
But it's always fun to see the kinds of things that kids think about. I honestly don't know. So Blake is now 13. He'll be 14 in July. 14-year-old boy, unless he's prompted, he probably isn't even gonna, he'll be like, hey, happy Father's Day, Dad. Like, anything, right? And that's the kind of the difference, right? The dads with their daughters or dads with their sons, right? Sons are like, hey, how you doing? Right? When he gets older, like, we'll go play golf. I know that we'll go play golf. In fact, I actually thought about taking him golfing this Sunday.
And
first thing.
I think it does have to be earned too. It's funny you said it that way. Not earned, but it has to be organic, because by the same token, when my mom remarried, I don't know at what point I started giving my stepdad at least a Father's Day greeting or a card, but it was a couple in after they got married. And it wasn't like I woke up one day and says, you know what? I now accept him, so I shall give him a card. I mean, it wasn't anything official. It just, it just made sense at some point. And I think children have to be permitted to figure out when it makes sense for them. And in this day and age, like we're going to talk about the special needs component, I think just from a real life and in, a current standpoint, we need to acknowledge, the different families that are out there. There are blended families everywhere. That means something else as well too. For, when that is, when it's accepted or acceptable for the child to, give a card to, a stepdad or stepmom too.
Yeah. I would love to hear if anybody who's watching us live wants to put something, in the chat of maybe a custom or something that you've done or that you do regularly for Father's Day. We'd love to hear, what you all do. Because I think it's, I think it's fascinating. And listen, in this, post-pandemic world we're living in, last year it was probably difficult for a lot of folks to celebrate Father's Day. Last June we definitely weren't going out to restaurants for Father's Day. There's Jordan. We always bought you ties. We got you that. Oh yeah, oh my God, it's so funny you said that, Joe. So they got me a mouse pad from a photo shoot, right? Hold on, it wasn't the three of you. It was actually just the two of you at the time. I actually use it every single day. This was a Father's Day gift from my daughters. This was, I don't know, this is quite some time ago. Look how adorable they are. And I literally use it every single day. And so I see, the nice thing is that I get to see their faces on a regular basis. Unfortunately, I have my mouse, rolling over their faces, but at least I see their faces every day. But that's funny. I have a lot of ties from the kids. Sixth grade. You were in sixth grade, Joe. My daughter Jordan was in sixth grade. She's the oldest one there. So wow. Gabby was in third or fourth grade then. That's wild. Now Jordan's married and Gabby is a college graduate. Crazy. Wow. Time flies, you guys. Time flies, and that's the one thing. Time with our fathers. So as I think I've shared on this podcast before, I didn't know my biological father when I was younger, for a whole bunch of reasons we don't need to talk about today. But when I found my father, and then these kinds of days or these kinds of events, to your point, Shawn, I think they take on a different sort of reflective meaning, right? You have to look at that because, my biological father remarried and had two children of his own, and my mom had remarried, and I got the name Altunian out of the deal. And I spent Father's Day with my dad, my stepdad, who adopted me when I was young, and so that was my dad. When I found my biological father, then it changed. Like things changed because what'd you say?
How so?
Yeah, because it's the meaning of fatherhood, which I think as you alluded to, the idea of being a father. There's a father who contributes half of the gene pool in your body, and there's the father who contributes their time and energy and love. And circumstances that had me not know my biological father, it definitely made me change the way I looked at fatherhood. I totally appreciate my stepdad for the contributions that he made to my life. Again, it's interesting. Now I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say, when I found my biological father, that's when my relationship with my stepfather changed. And I would say it changed on his end more than it changed on my end, because it was additive to me. I had a biological father who I look like, and we share genes, and, we share, asthma and allergies, and all those things. Yeah. And so I got to acknowledge my biological father on Father's Day, just as, hey, thank you for being part of my, of my being here, and now part of my life on a going forward basis. And I think that also changed my, how my dad, I call Archie Altunian my dad, his perception of our relationship changed because of that. Almost like he had committed so much. And I think we do as fathers, right? When we raise children that are not our own, as you've done, Shawn, the contribution that you've made to the lives of those children, it's, something that should be honored and respected and taken, not taken for granted. And I never have. I've always felt that it shaped who I am in the world. By the way, good and bad, shaped who I am in the world. I learned a lot of I learned the things that are learned. I learned from my stepdad. The things that are innate, that are nature, right, from my biological father. So the fact that I'm the product of both is a blessing, really, if you think about it. Unfortunately, my stepdad didn't look at it that way. He looked at it as somewhat of a betrayal, that I would, that the contributions that he made to my life, as if they were cast aside so that I would find and have a relationship with my biological father. Yeah. And that's sad and unfortunate. And he's chosen to sort of, distance himself a little bit. And that's sad. Father's Days and, his birthdays and Father's Days and holidays come, and, I think about it and reflective on it, that it's sad because families, whether they're fully biological or they're made up of this blended family, which seems to be much more common these days, There should be that there's an acknowledgement, and these days are just as important for those blended families as they are for the biological family. So ego gets in the way of this a lot, right? People's ego. Yeah. And as our producer Sean Hall is making comments on the, on our chat, any man can father a child, but it takes a special person to be a dad, and that is the truth. That is the truth, and that's why I like doing what we do together, Sean, because you are the penultimate, like you're the ultimate man. You are so generous and you're so giving. What you give to your family, first of all, your business, your community, all of that stuff, but to your family, to your son Elijah, to your stepdaughters, and then to your adopted children who you've adopted as a ward and really as a caregiver. Really, something to be admired and honored. I don't know if I don't know if have that makeup. I mean, I'm sure I did if push came to shove, but I watch you and I'm in awe, because you've made that choice. As Sean says, it's a special person to be a dad. You've made that choice. 7 children, like that's incredible. It's an incredible thing, man. So
that means a lot to me. And it has everything to do with, this goes back to the same thing about dads. It's like, okay, what example do I have as a dad? And that ties into, when my mom and my dad split up, that could have been very acrimonious. But the one thing that I had as a benefit is I never heard my dad speak ill of my stepdad. And I never heard my stepdad speak ill of my dad. And I never thought much of it. It just, that's why who we associate with plays such a role in who we become. That's why as men, we have to really be careful with what we say, what we do, and the line between the two, because we have such a big effect on the world that will be when we no longer are, based on the example that we give to our children, especially to our boys who become men, and to girls as well. And so what happened because of that example is that when Laura and I first, started dating, the girls never heard me speak ill about their dad. So that kind of went, that went both ways, and then, and as a matter of fact, I didn't really think about it until the rehearsal dinner for our wedding. My mother-in-law was very shocked that, wait a minute, so his dad is coming from the Virgin Islands here for the wedding and going to be at his mother's house where she lives with his stepdad, like for dinner. And it's just, I didn't stop and think. And it's funny because I think because Father's Day is coming up, my dad happened to have visited, and it wasn't a plan, his last visit here, even though I've seen him more recently, his last visit here happened to be on or near Father's Day. He happened to be here for Father's Day a couple of years back. And on my feed on Facebook, the picture came up as a memory, and it was the two of them sitting at a table talking. And, that was the second or third time that, that had occurred. And it just made me stop and think of the benefits of both situations and all of that stuff. Every last bit of it is just so important, what we do.
I think people have to, get that, one doesn't take away from the other. It's all additive, right? 1 + 1 equals, 5 to some degree. Because
let me ask you this. Yeah. Have you ever, and we could go in a totally other direction and make a whole show about that, but I just can't help but be curious. I'm sure the answer is yes. You talked about how, and I understand the idea of being maybe not threatened, but at least aware, as a stepdad, the child that you're raising, when they have a relationship with their biological father, there could be certain things where maybe there's a gift or something, and you at least acknowledge that, that feels a little odd, whatever, but I have to be here and let that be what it's going to be, right? So your dad's feeling that, at least I would understand, your stepdad, but to the point where there's full-on threat or perception of threat, is something that I find so fascinating. And so my question is, did you ever say to him, like, look, this doesn't take away from anything? And
For sure.
And I'm sure
no. We had in-depth conversations, and look, here's the thing. I look like my biological father, as my older brother does. Like, we carry the same traits. We both look like our biological father. He was. I think he was just threatened with the idea that, and it's all ego. At the end of the day. And by the way, I'm not really knocking him. He's made his choices. He's an adult. He's in his 80s. He's lived a long life. He's made his choices. He does what he does. But I think that, again, and I thought you were going to go a slightly different route, because, my son, my son's mother, who, if she were to get remarried, he would have a stepfather. And so, the way I look at it, I will say this, and so I'm a proud man. So there's a couple things that I would say. First of all, my relationship with my son is unique to me, and no person would change that. It doesn't really matter that if married to my son's mother or not. Nothing can change that. Nothing will change that. Nothing will change our relationship. Right. Easy to say. There are things that my son and I share. There's activities that we share. There are things that we do that are ours. And I think that I can see where my ego might get, what's it called in hockey? Check, when you're checked against the wall. I think my ego would get, checked against the wall if my son's new stepfather started to, play baseball with him, or take him out to do the things that we do as a way to, try to develop a relationship, right? Or I try to wait upon. But here's the thing. So I consider myself to be sort of an evolved person. I think I can acknowledge now, it hasn't even happened. I can acknowledge now that my ego would probably take a little bit of a hip check there. And at the same time, I acknowledge that if somebody wants to bond and make the relationship, better, it only helps his mother and his relationship with his mother. So, again, I would look at that as an additive experience. I know it's hard for men to think about it that way, but my perspective is, in anything that adds to the value of my child's life, I'm a supporter of. And so, easy for me to say because it hasn't happened, but I can understand how some men take a big knock to their ego when another man steps in and takes over the role of raising. I'm lucky my son's 13. So the raising part, as we always raise our children, but the formative years have begun, and, it's different than if he were 2 or 3 years old. Right.
Right.
So anyways, I just, to be evolved. And I think our children's lives are served better when parents put their own egos aside and perform to the benefit of the child. Yes. It's what, and again, not proud of the fact I've been married and divorced twice. I never thought that I would ever be that person, right? Not that clearly I have judgments about that and completely unfounded, but, my relationships with my wives, again, something weird to say, but, was always bonded around making sure that our children were taken care of, and that our children's needs came first. And we, we have our own personal things that we say or do, about or to one another. But the reality is we co-parent first. And right. I think that that's a subject that, I know that we can definitely get into, because it really is about co-parenting. And when it comes to special needs children, the amount of co-parenting, required is significant. And I think that again, if we look at in the world, whether it's 2 or 4 or 6 or however many co-parents are involved in it, it takes a village. As we know, we talk about it all the time. It takes a village. So I think if you have the mentality that raising a child is a village mentality, it becomes a lot more egoless, if you will, right? Yeah. It's not our egos that guide our efforts.
Right, definitely. Moving into the special needs space, what are your first recollections or acknowledgments of Father's Day as a father to a child with special needs? Or would you say that there wasn't such just because your dad is a dad is a dad? You know what I mean? What is your take on that?
Wait, I'm not sure I understand the question.
I was asking, what if any recollection do you have as your first Father's Day or your first recollection as in terms of Father's Day as a dad to a child with special needs? Is there a special needs component to that, or is it because maybe because sometimes they don't even show up until your child is actually a certain age, and there's something that takes place where whether you're thinking about your mortality, whatever the case might be, when, if any time, did you arrive at that, if that makes sense?
I don't think that there was ever a distinction for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it was ever, I'm a dad and now I'm a special needs dad. Because as fathers who, we're given, by the way, we're not given that title until we have children, right? Men, husbands, we only become fathers after we have children. And so the moment that our child is born, we're a father. And so the designation or the diagnosis of a special needs issue never doesn't change that. It doesn't make the title have an asterisk, right? Father's Day for me has been Father's Day all along. I don't know if there's something behind your question. I guess I would turn around and ask you, was it different for you?
No, because the one thing we do is, for those that don't know, we will pick a topic for our show. Well, if sometimes, if we have a guest, the topic speaks for itself. And the only formality that we have is the order of things, which is Brian's intro, then the music, and then we introduce ourselves to you, and we kind of go from there. So our show is very organic. So when a guest comes on, we let them know that, look, it's very conversational. It's just about, because that's how the show was born, from our conversations, just two dads talking. And so I'm saying all that to say that this was no exception, and maybe even more so because it was very organic. And maybe I'm just thinking of other people's shoes, because as you were answering it, I was thinking to myself, I'm not sure where the question came from, because for me, there wasn't one. For some people, I would imagine, I think when and if one ever gets to that point is probably dependent upon the level of severity that they may be dealing with as far as their child's diagnosis or disability is concerned. For me, there really wasn't one. The closest I come to that is just the acknowledgement that of my own mortality, and I'm happy to be here for another Father's Day period, as each one comes along. So I don't think so. So that was my reason for it.
No, but listen here. I mean, it's funny because it elicits some thoughts, because we know families, we know parents of special needs children by our associations, and I do think so. It's a good question, but you and I have known each other now for quite some time, so you kind of know my answer is there's no distinction, right? But for some parents there is. I think you're right. I think it comes from the space. I think for some parents of special needs children, I think that there does become a distinction at times. But again, it goes back to the same thing. When their ego is checked, that's when a distinction is made, right? Some people, if the picture looks different than they envisioned or than they planned, then everything around it is, I don't want to say tainted, but in their minds, it's somewhat tainted by that. I know dads who their relationship with their spouses have changed. Their relationship with their children has changed. They don't know how to deal with their child's special needs issues. They don't know how to deal with the medically, their medically complex situations. They make it about themselves. They make it about their spouse, their partner, their ex-spouse at some times, right? And so that does come up. It's weird. It was in the osmosis, via osmosis that question came up for you, Shawn. But the reality is, I think that certain fathers are challenged by that designation of being a special needs father, and for some, it does take a hit. Not for me. For me, I honestly, sometimes I'm 99.9% of the time, I even forget that Jordan had any, any learning disability or any challenge, because, she's like just my kid, right? She just,
Right.
she calls me.
It's not even about special needs. It's just, this is who we are and what we do, and these are factors of our life. And you know what I want to do is I want to encourage anyone who is not listening live. If there's anyone listening live today, on Facebook, and put anything in the chat pertaining to that last particular question. But if you happen to catch this episode on the YouTube channel, feel free to chime in at that point and talk about what that might be like for you, because I think the answer to that question is not only determined by the level of severity with regard to the disability or delay or diagnosis, but it also has to do with that individual, how they respond to things that happen to them, and their situation. Are they single? Are they part of a team in terms of a relationship or marriage? Are they someone that is not only single, but are they single as a result of someone who could not cope with that, and then as a result left? So there's a lot of perspective out there. So I think subconsciously I was probably just thinking of other people's perspective other than my own, which is what made the question come about, even though I should have known that didn't apply with you.
Well, yeah, no, it's a good question. I'm glad, and it's funny that you say that, because I'll say this. I'm gonna call somebody out. So we've had a guest on our show, Jessica Pate, who runs a support group for moms of the special needs community called We Are Brave Together. And this week, on this week's podcast, is her husband, Chris. And you and I both had a conversation with her that's like, oh my God, because Chris Pate is, who's an attorney by profession. That relationship is one that I think that many families, even of neurotypical children, would aspire to have, because Chris is as involved and as much a warrior in that family as Jessica. And I love the fact that she's had him on her podcast this week, because in a way it's a celebration of Father's Day, but he's unique, right? He's embraced the role of special needs parent in such a way that he's an advocate and a warrior. And as we've had, Matt Failer, who is an advocate, and, we've had some Dan Habib, we've had some very, strong guests who their strength is in their strength of their advocacy for their child. And they've taken that role on, and not only for their family, but taken and supported the outward impact of on the community. And so Matt and Chris and Dan, those are great examples of men who have done amazing things as fathers. But we also know, I know of, a few in particular who didn't have that relationship and don't have that kind of involvement. And in fact, in a way, it's been a problem. It's been a problem where one parent is the heart and soul and the blood, sweat, and tears of the support of that child. And as we know, some children with special needs issues, such as, on the autism spectrum, and those with cerebral palsy and some other more challenging diagnoses, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. It takes so much out of you as a parent that you really need to have a partner that can shoulder some of that burden with you. And and the unique thing that men have are these massive egos that aren't often checked until they get checked. I keep saying we're checking our ego, but when it happens, when you have a special needs child and that ego hasn't been put in place, you definitely do see it. I feel for parents, and by the way, I feel for parents when they're the sole caretaker or the majority caretaker for a child with special needs, because often it can feel like you're out there and you're very alone. But a huge salute and honor for those folks like Chris Pate and Dan Habib and Matt Failer, those who have been on our show before, that have taken the mantle of co-warrior and co-advocate. Because it can be a challenge. You and I are of the same ilk and mindset, and we are also advocates and proponents. But there are some that are out there that are not, and so I would think that the day of Father's Day celebration means something different, because that piece hasn't been solidified.
Right. I have a friend, a dear friend, who is a fellow special needs warrior like myself, and a great relationship with his significant other. They parent together and everything, but didn't start out that way. So he has one biological child that is on the autism spectrum. She has two neurotypical children from her previous relationship. But when they met, and then they have one child together. But when they met, he was a single dad because the mom couldn't take it. And usually you hear of situations where it's the dad that may leave. And it's interesting. I would save this towards the end, but for any dad any man who has stepped up to play the role of dad like that in those situations and sort of just picked up the slack, and in the game of life, been a member of the team where somebody's hurt or not participating, taking the next man up approach, hats off to you and salutes, because that's the kind of stuff that makes the world go round.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think, raising children, especially if you come into a relationship where you are, in a fatherly role of children that were not yours biologically. Same thing, man. Next man up. I think that's a great term for it, right? Next man up. Yeah, that's awesome. I love some of these comments.
Yeah, when Elijah was born, this is interesting. It wasn't about Father's Day, but when he was born, Laura and I planned it and everything. After we got married, we knew we were ready to have children, of our own together. And when he was born, and I sat there, was so blown away that I forgot to take the camera out. I had it around my neck, my camcorder. And, as I cut the cord and everything, I just thought to myself, if I was, I felt like, okay, I'm his dad, I'm his father, because I'm there. If I were absent for whatever reason, that's what somebody else would be.
Yeah.
And that really hit me at, in that moment. And it's one of the most significant moments of my existence ever.
Well, and again, if our progeny, right, if we want our children to have everything available to them to be successful in the world, everything, whether it's a teacher, stepfather, step parent, a teacher, a coach, there are so many people who play a significant role in the development of your child, that while yes, a majority of it happens at home and your children learn a lot from you and the rules that you set in place and who you are in the world. But, I can point to some very, very specific people who are not my parents, who had a significant impact on my development and on decision-making and on, thought processes. And, I've always looked at myself as a student. So I was always learning, and observing and taking as much, but I had an uncle who had a very, we had a couple of meals together, just the two of us, that were so significant, so impactful in my life, and the decisions that I made as a young adult, what I did with my life on a going forward basis. It was a huge part of my development, who I am today. A big chunk of that.
Is he the one that you had the conversation with that encouraged you to go to college?
Yes.
And I take it he knows that, and you've told him that.
I told him that, and as he was in ill health, I reminded him of that, and my aunt said that was a significant moment for him to hear again as he was fading away. And so, and I still tell my aunt my fond memories of my uncle for that exact role in my life. And again, listen, coaches, I've had teachers who have been significant and coaches who have been significant. I see coaches in my son's life that are significant, and teachers who made impact on my daughter's life. So again, if you look at this, like we want our children to be successful, we acknowledge that other people are going to make massive contributions to the development of our children. Where it comes from is somewhat irrelevant. It's our ego that gets hit if it just happens to be a man in place, or in our place, right? But that it does happen. Relationships hit their life, their lifeline, and they change, and somebody else steps in, and in my right, and so that's it. It's gonna.
No, that's absolutely true. And then to the other point where I find myself continuously asking, did you say this? Did you tell that person? Did that happen? Is that there is something to be said, which is of immeasurable value, in making sure that we give people their flowers while they're here.
Right. That's what my mother used to say that too.
Yeah, because what happens is that everybody, we're quick to give them when they're gone. They can't smell them, they can't see them. We don't know that. And the truth of the matter is, we hope, which is a whole nother conversation we could have, just in terms of existence and whether or not there's something, to life or something there more than just this realm that we know. But until you've gone and for a fact, the bottom line is, we need to make sure that people can smell the flowers while they're here.
For sure. And I think, you listen, in the business that we're in, and for those who don't, who have participated with us and know what the work that Shawn and I do, our company focuses a lot on personal development and on acknowledgement and coaching and mentoring and guidance. And, it's a big part of what we do. And to your point, we're, the idea of edification or acknowledging somebody who contributes to your life while they're contributing to your life is so significant, and you have no idea the impact it has. As we just posted this, comment from Sean Hall, we had the beautiful luxury of having a conversation with a whole group of folks on Zoom, acknowledging a good, a massive achievement in Sean's professional life, where he got licensed in our business. And we gave Shawn a platform to just say a few words, which, by the way, we don't do for everybody. And I don't know why. We should do it for everybody. But giving Shawn that platform, and Shawn spends a lot of time, for those who don't know, or maybe if you've been with us for a while, Shawn works behind the scenes for us a lot. He does a lot of our, we call him our producer, because he's as much a partner in all of this as Shawn and I. And Shawn got a chance to thank everybody for the support and the love and the contribution, but more important, Shawn's wife, Cowie, who we haven't had the chance to spend much time with at all. And I know she gives up Shawn for the hour that we spend every week doing this podcast, and then some, because he spends a lot more time, outside of this time frame to support us. And she got a chance to, acknowledge the impact that our show and this village, this community, those of you who are watching and those of you who are listening, the impact it's had on them and their family, and acknowledge that they have a grandchild with cerebral palsy. And that is something that was new news for you, Shawn, right? That was new news.
I didn't know.
And we don't realize the impact we have on people while we're engaged in the middle of a conversation. And so really, all going back to this exact same point of giving flowers to people while they're alive, acknowledging people for the work that they do and the contribution they make to your life and to the lives of your family and your children. And, again, for those parents of special needs children, you've got advocates and therapists and, folks who are supportive in the educational process and the physical therapy process and the speech therapy process and the occupational therapy process that have an impact on your children's lives as well. And so, acknowledging all of the folks that contribute to your lives, it's what we want to highlight and talk about. But listen, without a topic today, I think it's kind of amazing that we've been going down this path. And honestly, Shawn, it's kind of, I think as dads, as just two dads, I think that this whole episode is all about why we do this, right? Why we're able to have these kinds of conversations.
It is. And, for anybody that might want to think twice, or just not, or think that they can get around to it when it comes to giving the flowers, the thing is that you want to return the favor, because if it feels that good, the value that someone's given to your life or your day in a moment, you don't want to rob them of it by not letting them know how much it meant to them.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of that, and thank you, Rich, for your comment. For those that are just listening, Rich O'Neill, one of my business partners and close friends as well, just sent a note out. Many times parents alone can't fulfill all the voids and life education and teaching that a child needs for well-rounded education and growth. And I totally agree with that. And Robert, thank you, Rich. I appreciate that. And Robert Moorhead, our family down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, when we give our personal testimonies, it's helped lower our stress while lifting others out of their alone places. And Robert's been a huge supporter of our podcast and the work that we do here, and responsible for getting us down on WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands and along the East Coast. And for all of you to know that Shawn and I are working with Susanna Lavelle, one of our frequent guests and also supporters of our show. We're working on a 2-day event, a special needs summit. We're going to call it a special needs summit. I just want a brief mention here because you'll hear more about this as pieces come together. But closer to the end of the summer, many of these guests that we talk about here are going to come back and do, I want to call them, sort of a version of a TED Talk, if you will, or a presentation of what it is that they do, and provide a resource for everybody, because there are so many phenomenal resources for the kind of support that we're all talking about, that you're all mentioning on the chat, that we want to make sure that people have access to that. Shawn and I have been promising to have our website built for, I don't know, a year, and it is coming. But more importantly, this 2-day summit is intended to provide that, a platform for people to see. We're going to try to have as many of us in the same room as we possibly can as well, because we're moving into live, new reopened events. And so it's coming. You'll get more details on that. But these resources of these people who make a contribution to our lives on a daily basis as peers, as parents, and for our children, and for the people in our communities, we want the world to know that there are just amazing people out there. And we're so grateful for the partnership and the participation that they have in our lives. And we want to make sure that we share that with all of you too. So just be on the lookout for that. That's coming up in a couple months, and we'll be talking more about that as we get closer.
And by the same token, if there's a service, a subject, a challenge, a matter, a problem, a worry that you have, especially as a caregiver or a parent to someone with special needs, reach out to us and let us know. And especially if you know someone that helps to provide any of those solutions as well. We want to have the problem of having too many people for the event. We'd rather have that than not have enough. We've got a lot of resources ourselves, but again, like we said earlier, it takes a village, and as a member of that village, you want to make sure that we're strengthening the village as much as possible and growing it too. So if you know anyone that provides any service or solutions to those who are raising children or a caregiver for someone with special needs, by all means, let us know.
Yeah. I think that's a good thing for us to always be on the lookout. They say that, if you wake up in the morning and you're set on finding miracles in your life, you're going to see miracles. If you are looking for, there's so much work done right on the, things like Think and Grow Rich and these personal development things where, we even talk about it. Our mentor, Ed Milet, talks about the reticular activation system. That's when you buy the blue Honda, and then all of a sudden there are like a million blue Hondas on the road at the same time. Like, how did everybody go out and buy the Honda the same day I did? They didn't. Your awareness opened up and increased. So as you're looking for miracles, you see miracles. If you're looking for trouble, often you find trouble. But for those of you, if you know of people that are making a difference in people's lives, we are open to it. We're always looking. We're always encountering people who are doing great things, and we want to continue to do that. So be looking for folks that can make a contribution to the lives of the folks in our community as we build a large web of connected folks. We have already connected many of the guests on our podcast with one another because their services are so complementary. David Fields at the Campbell Center, another one, and Brett Lieberman with his Yick Unity, learning through music and education. There's so many people who have done. Jessica, amazing. Susanna, amazing work as a life coach for special needs families. So we're going to talk about all those and wait till you see some of the amazing things that are happening in our community. I'm so proud to be doing all this, and so proud to be doing this with you, Shawn, and Shawn Hall. And, yes, Robert, all of our children are special. All of our children are special. All of us have needs. All of us have, Sean Francis says it all the time. It's just a little different, variation of needs. And by the way, as a village, we should all make sure that folks who have need have somebody who can fulfill that need. Think about how great the world would be, how amazing the world would be if we weren't giving labels, and just making sure that if somebody had a need, that there was somebody, including ourselves, who could fulfill that need. It would be an amazing place. And on that, I can't believe it. I'm going to say this like all of our guests, like, wow, this hour has gone by so fast. It's like incredible.
Yes.
We're just talking, and just for everybody who's listening, if you're catching us for the first time, either live on, on online or on podcast or on WSTX radio, this is how this whole thing started. Shawn and I just have these conversations where, an hour would go by. We're like, man, that was incredible. And that was, such a valuable addition to my life. And I thank you for that. So, as we wrap up our show, Shawn, I'm, always every day, always, so proud to be in partnership with you in life and in the world here and in our business. Yes. Robert always says we still need more hours. We need 2 hours. We may get to that one of these days. Maybe what we'll do is maybe we'll have a couple of guests and we can, trade, we could go back and forth with a couple of guests, but thank you, Robert, for that. I always say, I'm so grateful for the people in our lives. I'm so grateful. And I love that my daughter, Jordan gets on this call and contributes as well. And Shawn Hall out in Hawaii, who does such a phenomenal job supporting us, and Shawn, you and your family. I'm grateful as we get to another Father's Day that I get to celebrate that with my children. Those that are my son, who is with me physically, will be with me this Sunday, and for my daughters who are away. Grateful to them. And today I would say more than ever, empathy and love is what makes the world go around. So the more that you can share empathy and love with those around you, in your community, in your village, in your family, in your school, in your neighborhood, now that the world is opening up again after the pandemic, you never know what people have just gone through over the last 15, 16 months. So give as much empathy and love as you possibly can. And on that note, I'll throw it to you, Shawn, to close us out for this episode.
No, dude, I appreciate you as well. I appreciate everyone that is involved in this entire process, everyone that tunes in, whether they're doing so live or on the various platforms, or in my little village in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where I'm proud to say I am from. I was sitting there thinking, you're talking about what people went through over the last 15 months. Think about that 15 months. When you first heard that the pandemic, was taking place and things were locking down, that seemed like, a minute ago, and it went by like that. Okay. 2022 is less than 6 months away. Think about that. And as I'm saying that, I had to look in the corner of my computer screen to remind myself, because I'm still accepting 2021. So I say that time is the original gangster. Time is the OG. Time does not give a damn about any of us. It has a job to do, which is to keep moving regardless. So with that said, remember that there is no such thing as special needs. Everyone has the same needs. Everyone needs to know that they're loved. Everyone needs to know that they're seen, that they're heard, that they matter. If they have a diagnosis of some kind, they may just have a special amount of the same needs that everyone has. But that is about it. So know that someone needs to know that that you matter, that you care. And for those that are watching us, listening, wherever you might be, just remember that we love you, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Oh, and one thing I almost forgot as we're all thinking it, as I'm going, I have to make sure that I thank the women in my life, without whom I could not even begin to attempt to be who I hope to be or be who I am today. And that includes my mom, Jan, and my amazing wife, Laura. So thank you so very much.
And happy Father's Day to dads and stepdads and moms who act as fathers, and uncles who act as fathers, and anybody who's making a fatherly contribution to the people in your lives. We hope that you have, and if you're catching this after the fact, we hope that you have had an amazing Father's Day. And even though it's an acknowledgement of one day, your father's forever. And we acknowledge you, we salute you, and we love you. And we're here in brotherhood and partnership. So thank you all. Thank you. Great episode today.